Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live. Status Coup, Wednesday, August the 17th, 2022, joined by Kim Brown, host of Burn It Down with Kim Brown, which I watched some of last night. Very fiery.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's the point. After all, it is Leo season. So, of course, we have to put fire upon the things that need to come down. What's going on, Jordan? Thank you so much for having me today.
Kim, it's been a day. I mean, compared to others around the world, I don't have it bad. But my dog, we we did its first dental cleaning yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, it's a whole thing with anesthesia.
That's right.
Boy, she has not been herself, and I've been trying to wrangle her all day. And I tried to take her on a walk. She didn't want to go. She's seems drugged, ghosted. So I've been dealing with that and trying to finally get the outline for a book I'm working on done. So that's been fun. But my day's been better than Liz Cheney and all the resistance liberals crying tears for Liz Cheney. So we'll be talking about that. Also, there is a scam afoot. I imagine that in the United Corporations of America over PPP loans that wealthy folks, including Nancy Pelosi's husband, got. And these millionaires got PPP loans, meant for struggling small businesses, and then got the loans forgiven. Look at that.
That's usually how the scams work. They usually work at a very high level, just as so, and benefiting the people that it's intended to benefit, not the ones that it is stated to benefit. Right?
Correct. And then we're going to have a guest if it all works out. Hopefully, Kansas City tenants are fighting back and disrupting events in Kansas City because the rent is too damn high. And I hope this might be a sign of things to come because I know you've been covering this on your show. Before we get to it, I just want to properly introduce Kim because this is our first time together live. Kim, tell the people about your channel, who you are, because Kim's going to be hosting solo on Wednesdays, but we haven't properly introduced you. So tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Jordan. Well, my name is Kim Brown. I'm from Maryland. I live in Prince George's County, Maryland, right outside of DC. I am the host of Burn It Down with Kim Brown, which I frame as a safe space to set oppression ablaze. I used to be a very good, reliable Democrat, and then I grew the fuck up and decided that this current political system as it stands and the economic system that we are living under in America, it needs to come down. In addition to other systems of oppression, racism is a system of oppression, misogyny, specifically misogynoir, homophobia, transphobia, ableism. These are all systems of oppression that need to be exterminated. They need to be burned with fire. And I think that our generation and the generations under us, and of course, learning from the elders who came before us, I think the time is really right for us to start planning, strategizing, and envisioning and implementing a new world the way that we know that things can be, the way that we know that things should be, because we have to leave the world a better place than what we found it. So my background is broadcasting. I used to be a journalist and a correspondent for the Real News Network. I actually even worked for Russian media for a spate of time, formerly of the Voice of Russia, which is now known as Sputnik Radio. I have a long broadcasting career in radio. I have hosted talk radio stations. I have hosted adult contemporary, urban, hip hop, and R&B. I mean, I've kind of done the gamut, but talking about issues that affect people who don't have a voice, people who are not likely to be interviewed on CNN or MSNBC, and speaking from specifically the radical left. This is where I want to be, in these kinds of spaces, in left spaces, in transformative spaces, y'all. Because I'm sorry, I am too old to be still putting up with America's bullshit, and so are you. So the time is now. This is what Burn It Down with Kim Brown's all about, and I'm so excited and appreciative of the opportunity to come and host Status Coup News on Wednesdays.
Awesome.
So, hey, everybody.
Now, folks, you have two patriotic duties, even if you don't like America. Number one, smash that like button. It's right under the live stream. Smash that like button. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this. The second thing, subscribe to Kim's channel. It's in the description, the link. Go subscribe and check her out. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 o'clock Eastern, correct?
Tuesdays and Fridays. Yes, Tuesdays and Fridays. That is when we do the main Burn It Down with Kim Brown. Yeah.
Awesome. So Kim, let's start in a moment of silence. For pro-torture. Sorry.
That's okay. Poor little Tink Tink. Poor little Liz.
Had to add that sound effect. For pro-torture, anti-women, anti-worker, anti-democracy, because, the liberals are fawning over Liz Cheney that she wants to save democracy. Didn't really care about democracy when it came to the 2000 election. She helped steal. But anyway, Liz Cheney, not shocking, lost her primary in Wyoming, so she's gone. And boy, well, she lost because she wouldn't push Trump's nonsense and lies. And between the never Trumpers and the resistance liberals, it's been a lot of tears today on the I wouldn't call it the left, but on the MSNBC, CNN left. Colin, can you play the montage that you put together of these patriots set over Liz Cheney?
The great and original champion of our party, Abraham Lincoln, was defeated in elections for the Senate and the House before he won the most important election of all. Lincoln ultimately prevailed, he saved our Union, and he defined our obligation as Americans for all of history.
The language was remarkable, talking about in the spring of 1864, the Union suffered more than 17,000 casualties in the Battle of the Wilderness. Cheney said, General Ulysses Grant had a choice to retreat or keep fighting. As the fires of the battle still smoldered, Grant rode to the head of the column. He rode to the intersection of Brock Road and Orange Plank Road. And there, as the men of his army watched and waited, instead of turning north, back toward Washington and safety, Grant turned his horse south towards Richmond and the heart of Lee's army. Refusing to retreat, he pressed on to victory. General Grant, President Abraham Lincoln, and all who fought in our nation's tragic war saved our Union. Their courage saved freedom. And if we listen closely, they are speaking to us down through generations. We must not idly squander what so many have fought and died for.
It's very sad. I think it's a terrible tragedy for the country and for the people of Wyoming.
What is it for a man to gain the world but lose his soul? And I think as we've gotten into this committee, Liz and I get along really well. My respect for her was huge, by the way, prior to even all this, and it's grown immensely. She's very determined, very dogged, and she will chase Donald Trump to the gates of hell for sure.
She does have facts on her side. She has the truth on her side. She has history on her side, and she's much smarter than the people who she is fighting against.
Anything in her speech, Chris? We were frantically taking notes here, and I just stopped because there was so much she was saying. I mean, she really went in.
Yeah, what struck me was the reference to Lincoln and the reference to Grant.
Speech, he said, as we leave here, let us resolve we will stand together, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, against those who would destroy our republic. They are angry and they are determined, but they haven't seen anything like the power of Americans united in defense of our Constitution and committed to the cause of freedom.
And let me see your cowboy analogy and raise you a Star Wars analogy, because I'm told by one source that Cheney's staffers are really big fans of a recent editorial that compares her to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay, defeated initially, but ultimately part of the Force.
But I'll bet at the end of the day, she wouldn't trade what.
Good, Colin. I don't want to create a medical. I don't want to induce any medical conditions for the audience. Tim, which point struck you the most? Was it Ulysses S. Grant, Obi-Wan? What stood out to you there?
I mean, the amount of compassion pouring out for Dick Cheney's daughter. Like, I will always be blown away how people really do not know who their enemies are. And I guess maybe Liz Cheney is not the enemy of Joe Scarborough and Don Lemon on CNN, but she is absolutely my enemy in Congress. This lady stands against everything that I stand for. She is against voting rights. She is for pro-militarization. She is here in the state of Wyoming trying to encourage further uranium drilling without regard to whether or not these are safe extraction practices and et cetera. You know, she is drill, baby, drill. So I'm confused, like, whose hero is she? And we know that Democrats really love Republicans. We know that Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have lamented about the loss of the Republicans of yesteryear, the so-called, reasonable Republicans, the moderate Republicans. Well, that's a foregone thing. And Liz Cheney does not even fall into that category. She's not moderate at all. The only bipartisan thing, I suppose, that she agrees on Democrats with, well, two things at least, getting Trump, one, and increasing funding for the military, continue to fund the defense budget at god-awful levels. So I have to laugh, because this is the point in time to me where these two parties do seem that they are two heads of the same beast. Really, the only point of distinction between present day Republicans and Democrats is the abortion issue, right? But aside from that, they agree on everything else. So I'm not interested in associating with a party that's going to cry tears for Dick Cheney's daughter, Liz Cheney Jordan, Dick Cheney's daughter, Dick Cheney's daughter. I don't care whatever she does to go on in her political career and whatever aspirations she may have potentially to run for the 2024 GOP nomination for president. That's still Dick Cheney's daughter. That's Dick Cheney's daughter. Dick Cheney's daughter. How many more ranches and horses do you think Liz got as a result of all the military spending that Halliburton benefited from throughout the wars in Iraq and Iran? I'm going to guess, in Afghanistan, pardon me. I'm going to guess Liz benefited personally from some of those riches.
Absolutely. And by the way, she worked for the State Department, like in the Bush administration. So she's not just, Dick the cowboy's daughter. She was part of the Bush administration. She wrote a book with her father. Basically, we don't regret anything. Colin, let's go down memory hill, because Mourning Joe and CNN and the rest of the usual suspects, they didn't play the clips of Liz Cheney yesteryear. So let's start, Colin, if you have the one with Liz Cheney and Lawrence O'Donnell on, I think it was the Today Show back in 2009. Let's see what she had to say about torture.
Your father said it yesterday. Liz, your father said yesterday that 14% of them went back into terrorism.
Let's get the response.
I'm not denying that.
I'm not denying that, Lawrence. But now let me go through all of the inaccuracies in what you just said. First of all, the question of whether or not enhanced interrogation is torture has been answered, and it's been answered legally. And it's not that Cheney or President Bush or anybody else believed it to be torture. The Justice Department of the United Lawrence, I let you go. No, waterboarding is not torture. Lawrence, are you going to let me answer here?
Great.
Waterboarding is not torture. It's a very and you ought to go. I would refer you to Attorney General Holder's
Why
testimony.
has this country prosecuted people for waterboarding?
Lawrence,
why did we do that?
Because they did a number of other things in addition to waterboarding. But let me go through the points that you made. First of all, Attorney General Holder had a hard time explaining exactly what the legal definition is of waterboarding that would make it torture. We've done it to our own people. Secondly, your argument about why didn't we do it to 500 other people proves our point. It was used in 3 cases when we had terrorists who had information about potential attacks on the United States of America. So the notion that somehow, we should have waterboarded everybody, I'm surprised that that's a position you've taken this morning.
I'm not taking. I don't think we should have waterboarded anyone because it does not work, and there is zero evidence.
Hold on,
absolutely zero evidence.
You need to let me finish the point.
Go ahead.
There's zero evidence that we have seen. There is evidence that we haven't seen. The White House won't let us see. 14% of the people who were released from Guantanamo already have returned to the fight, and that's exactly why
by the Bush-Cheney administration.
And that's exactly why it's so dangerous for the Obama administration to say it's going to close Guantanamo and bring those people to the United States.
Oh my God.
What's amazing about that, she's arguing that we should have waterboarded the 500 others that they didn't waterboard. Oh, we only waterboarded 3. So how do we know it doesn't work? We should have waterboarded all the others. That was 2009, so over a decade ago. Okay, you wanna say, all right, that was a while ago, Jordan, but that wasn't in her pro-democracy days of recently. Well, let's just fast forward to 2021. This is 2021. Okay, let's play the clip where 60 Minutes is slobbering over her. This is from last year, Liz. I'd love to know there she was last year, still on the torture bandwagon. But I'd love to know what you think about her saying freedom means freedom for everybody, because she voted against the Voting Rights Act, or restoring parts of the Voting Rights Act last year. If we could pull up the Qasim tweet, Qasim Rashid, FYI, Liz Cheney opposed the Voting Rights Act. minimum wage increase, Equality Act, Equal Rights Amendment, George Floyd Act, Build Back Better, Infrastructure Bill, Inflation Reduction Act, $35 insulin bill, Women's Health Protection Act. I'm losing my breath. And price gouging bill. There's a lot in there that seems to be would be helpful for equality that she voted against.
Isn't it something the way that Democrats love to align themselves when reaching across the aisle with some of the worst actors on the right? I mean, to me, there is very little redeeming about Liz Cheney. I mean, listening to her track record, again, I always come back to Dick Cheney's daughter because I hear what you're saying, that she was, perhaps a political appointee in the Bush administration, but she is still one of those nepotism, legacy, affirmative action hires that because her father was a somebody, she will always have a position. And I love it that the primary voters of Wyoming sent her ass packing, because when they turn on themselves, okay, when those who subscribe to white supremacy overtly or even subtly turn on themselves, it is really my favorite genre of violence to see, and I'm here for more of it. But unsurprising to see Liz Cheney do an about face on the issue of gay marriage, because that is how people who usually have all the privilege and all the rights operate. They want gatekeeping for rights for people that they don't know, or for issues that do not affect them at all. So for the issue of gay marriage to directly impact Liz Cheney and her family and her sister and her sister's family, that is why she softened her position on that issue. But you won't see her soften her positions on voting rights, because everyone in her district probably has fair and free access to the ballot box. There aren't people in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, standing in line for 8 hours waiting to cast a ballot like they are in Atlanta, Georgia. These are not issues that affect her constituents. And at the end of the day, Liz Cheney is about trying to maintain power. She is still a party loyalist. She is here for the Republicans, even though that the Trump brand of the party is not here for her, which again, hilarious. But it's sad, and it's sadly funny to see all these liberals, all these, especially these mainstream I can't even call them conservative, but let's just call them moderate pundits, cry all these beautiful salty tears over Liz Cheney's demise, because she is going to be the only so-called reasonable voice on the Trump issue, on the January 6th issue, on the GOP side. So after she goes, I don't know whom the Republicans are going to have representing them in these hearings, which obviously they don't care to have representation on it anyway, because they want the whole situation to go away. So this is really a loss for Democrats, right? This is a loss of an ally that they can say, hey, well, at least we have one person across the aisle that agrees with us on the danger and the threat that Trump poses to quote unquote democracy. And now they don't have that anymore. But that's okay. I have a feeling that Liz Cheney, if she elects not to run for president, run for the Republican nomination for president in 2024, I'm sure MSNBC has a seat that they are keeping warm for her.
Absolutely. And what I find so amazing, multiple things. And remember, smash that like button. We got 260 people watching, but only 150 have pressed that like button. I need 100 more to press that like button. It makes a big difference. Super chats are welcome. Read them. We'll read them at the end. Maybe it's just because everybody's got selective amnesia, but like 22 years ago, Liz Cheney was on board with actually stealing an election, a successful election, theft. I mean, listen, I was young. I wasn't really paying attention to politics, but, Al Gore won the election. That's why the Supreme Court shut it the fuck down. I mean, if they would have counted those ballots in Broward County, we wouldn't have had Bush. And in my opinion, very unlikely 9/11 would have happened. Not that Al Gore was some champion of progressivism, but, I think he would have read his briefings that bin Laden about to, go into planes using airplanes as missiles. Very unlikely we would have had the Iraq War. We still would have had neoliberal corporatism. We still would have had handouts to the special interests, bipartisan crumb cake. But Liz Cheney was totally down with stealing that election in her younger years, but now she's some stalwart of democracy. Listen, I credit her for doing the bare minimum thing of opposing Donald Trump. I mean, it's not really much of a standard because Republicans are such spineless, conspiratorial, pathetic cowards. All of them are cowards. But it just says so much. And it's not just Liz Cheney. You've seen this, Kim. In the Trump years, George W. Bush was retroactively, made into, we missed the years of W,
Ew. Who said that, Jordan? That is grotesque. And as a Gen Xer who was
doing, the Today Show is doing pluff pieces on his painting, and MSNBC was slabbering over him. Keith Olbermann, for God's sakes, who made his career in politics going after the Bush administration, he apologized on The View to George W. Bush. So this is kind of like, listen, I think Trump should be covered critically. I think that Democrats, Republicans, everybody should be against this violent conspiratorial movement to overturn elections, this insistence that he won the election, which he did not, to be clear, but basically doing an extreme makeover and basically forget this. This isn't just like, oh, we disagree on taxes. This is somebody who's for torturing people. This is somebody who was totally for bombing and killing brown people around the world. I mean, the list goes on. And it's just really disgusting to me. The cheerleading and the mourning I expected from Joe Scarborough, but even, a lot of people that I might not expect it from, they have kind of recreated Liz Cheney into a palatable figure. She's not.
But palatable for whom exactly? Like, who does this serve? Like, whose agenda does this serve to try to quote unquote normalize Liz Cheney in the mind of, I suppose, non-Republican voters? I mean, her record is such that it's indefensible. I don't even care if she stands against Trump. That to me is a nice footnote, and probably will be the only thing that redeems her in the eyes of history, if anybody cares about what Liz Cheney's legacy is going to be. But everything else that she stands for, in theory, is opposed to what Democrats are advocating for. But when you peel it back, actually, it's not. Part of the things that she has on her website, or like actually on her, her House page, her congressional page, she was touting the fact that she helped to get past some additional funding for Ukraine and more defense spending on Ukraine, and to make sure that social safety net funding is in place for Ukrainians, right? And that always continues to bloat up America's military budget. It diminishes the amount of domestic funding for shit like that actual Americans need. Specifically, let's even talk about Wyomingites. I mean, they are dealing with this drought. They are dealing with a number of climate catastrophic issues. And Liz Cheney does not seem to offer up any policy solutions for that. But when I look at the way that the lamenting and the sadness and as if Liz Cheney was one of us, and now that she is not going to be sitting in her congressional seat anymore, then that's something that we should be sad about. And I I can't, to say I disagree with it is an understatement, because truthfully I find this shit hilarious, because these people tell us exactly who they are when they show us who they're rooting for and who they are rooting against, right? So we'll see time and time again Democrats in local races, or even congressional races or whatever. I'm thinking specifically of India Walton running for the mayoral seat in Buffalo, for example, and of course Nina Turner running for the congressional seat in Ohio. They were happy to run candidates to their right. They were happy to accept funding from right-wing super PACs and billionaires to run candidates to the right of the left progressive candidates. So it is very much on brand that Democrats would stand and be sad about someone like Liz Cheney losing her Republican congressional seat to somebody even probably more far to the right than she is, because these people in Congress, the DNC, DNCC, they want to support people who are not leftists. So this is totally on brand to me, that Liz Cheney is right in the Democrats' wheelhouse as somebody that they would be sad about them losing their congressional seat.
Right. And lastly, before we move on, Colin, put this up. Liz Cheney voted with Trump 93% of the time. 93% of the time she voted with Trump. So spare me. Okay.
That's you got A-.
Right.
She got an A- in Trumpism.
even though we don't actually have a democracy, she cares somewhat about keeping whatever democracy we supposedly have. But let me tell you something. Liz Cheney, here's what's going to happen. Maybe she'll run a narcissistic campaign for president as a third party or within the Republican Party. She knows she won't win, but it will set her up for, to be a resistance darling. She'll get on The View. She'll write another book. Then it will set her up for speaking engagements, who knows, a foundation. Maybe she'll take over the Lincoln Project. And we're going to continue to see this whitewashing of who the Cheneys are, who the Bushes are. I mean, MSNBC is now littered, like their whole green room is filled with, warmongers and neocons that should be in a witness protection program, politically speaking. So, yeah, that's where we're at. And you're completely right. They would much rather Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, MSNBC, much rather roll with the Liz Cheneys of the world than the Bernies of the world or, Nina Turners. And that's where we are. Before we move on, one more time for the boys and girls in the back, let's just give it, its proper symbol. Okay.
See ya.
All right. Smash that like button. We're going to have a guest on in about 10 minutes. But Kim, this story, I mean, I'm not surprised, but as we hear about this historic economic recovery, it's really something. This is from Daily Mail, which, is
Daily Fail? The Daily Fail.
Kind of like a Murdoch tabloid, but sometimes they actually have some good information. Exclusive. It pays to be rich. America's wealthiest, including Tom Brady, Khloe Kardashian, Reese Witherspoon, Kanye, and Nancy Pelosi's husband, took millions in PPP loans, and nearly all have been forgiven. Would you look at that? Nice. Kanye West borrowed $2.3 million, with $1.7 million being spent on payroll for 106 staff. Wonder where the rest went. Khloe, she got $1.2 million, mostly for payroll for 57 workers. The full amount plus interest was forgiven. Holy cow. Now let's go down. I'm curious about Nancy Pelosi, who obviously has been enjoying insider trading. Her husband enjoys insider trading and driving while intoxicated, which he got out of. But Nancy Pelosi's husband, I think it's at the bottom here. Hold on. Oh, Tom Brady. This one you got to love. Tom Brady. Where's that part? God, they have so many pictures in these stories. Tom Brady got $960,000 to help secure 80 jobs for his TB12 company. He's very poor playing NFL football. Right. Reese Witherspoon got almost $1 million. She's very poor too. Wow, Green Day. They got 3 loans, $452,000. Jared Kushner's family was granted 3 PPP loans for their various businesses. So that's $800,000. Kushner Family Hotel. Holy cow. $1.5 million. Hope your head's not exploding, Kim.
How is that even legal? I mean, weren't these PPP loans? And I think I'm getting my time as a construct has meant very little to me over the past 2.5 years. So I'm getting my dates mixed up. But the PPP loans were started to be distributed under Trump. Yes.
Yeah, they continued under Biden. They continued.
Lovely.
And Pelosi, husband Paul Pelosi, who has an 8.1% share in EDI Associates, a restaurant business, which took out 2 PPP loans. EDI Associates, they got $711,000 in the first loan to go to 52 employees, and they got $996,000 in the second loan. So that's almost $2 million in loans, which, including interest, were all forgiven. Just incredible, because the PPP program was supposed to be for small business owners, so that they could pay their workers, so that they, obviously they didn't have customers coming in droves. I mean, my parents own a small jewelry store. For them, it was like going through a fucking maze to get anything. They got it, but it was just to keep employees paid. But it was supposed to be for like the mom and pop small business, not for Nancy Pelosi's husband and Kanye and et cetera, et cetera. Colin, do you have the clip from my interview? I interviewed on my last reporting trip a small business owner. He owns a bar in Philly. We're going to air the full interview probably this weekend. But he explained that he took out a PPP loan and he has to pay it back. And he's going to be paying it back for the next 15 to 30 years if you have that, Colin.
And can you kind of talk about the pandemic? Because the marketing, the media put out, oh, you know, you're a small business, you got the PPP program, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I mean, my parents own a small jewelry store.
Right. You get it.
It was like literally going through a maze to get a loan.
Oh, it was impossible.
And a lot of these loans, you got to pay back, and it's a bureaucratic nightmare. Talk about the PPP. What were you able to get?
I don't want to pull numbers out of the air, but I believe I got some. It wasn't generous by any stretch of the imagination. And to get that was hundreds of hours of emails and phone calls just to get that little base breadcrumbs, essentially. They're more than happy to give me loans, you know, which I'm going to be paying off for the next 15 years. They were more than happy to give me a $32,700 loan, but grants, very, very difficult to come by. I got one local grant for maybe $3,000 or $4,000. And that's literally about it.
Interesting that you have to pay $32,000 and it's going to basically take you, you know, till you have grandkids, because right away in the pandemic, the Federal Reserve was pumping out trillions of dollars, buying up assets, bonds, flooding Wall Street with money. But the regular average Joe in Philly, you're going to be paying this through no fault of your own, for the next 15 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get like into your headspace, but
what's amazing about that, you know, we're the wealthiest country on earth. Europe, they didn't do these PPP loans. You know what they did? The government just fucking paid the payrolls for businesses. Let me repeat. Europe, far less wealthy than us, the government just paid the payrolls for the people. Maybe because they don't have a military budget that's $830 billion. So they had some money lying around to just cover the people. Because, you know, during a global pandemic, which, by the way, is still going on. I know the media wants to tell you, and Biden and them want to tell you, oh, no, you know, it's over. This variant, the BA5, has been spreading like wildfire. Now they're talking about a BA 4.2. I don't even know what it is. Fall is coming. Their CDC has completely done away with any safety precautions. So that's something to look forward to. But Kim, just incredible. Kanye, Pelosi, Tom Brady, all these millions of dollars. Sure, they have employees, but I'm pretty sure they have some fucking money in savings to pay their employees. And that money that went to them, I'm pretty sure did not go to the people that actually needed it.
Well, first of all, Jordan, let me just say I deeply appreciate seeing you masked out there in the streets while you were talking to people. Thank you so much for modeling that we need to be still taking the pandemic very seriously. So I appreciate that very much. But to these PPP loans, I mean, you guys know how it goes. America is capitalism for the poor, capitalism for the working class people, and it is socialism for the wealthy. That is who gets the government handouts. That is who is the true recipients of government welfare. And how many times are we going to see this scam repeated in front of us, like right directly in front of our eyes? Because during the 2008-2009 financial market and housing crisis, we saw, who was it? Was it Bernanke? Was Bernanke Fed chair during that time with the quantitative easing? Like literally pumping billions of trillions of dollars to prop up banks, to prop up JB Diamond and Chase Bank and Bank of America and all these lending institutions who fucked over the regular ass people. These institutions got bailed out to the tunes of billions and trillions. Meanwhile, millions of people were evicted from their homes, lost their homes, and felt still ongoing economic fuckery as a result of those policies. But it's not surprising to me at all to see the PPP loans be enacted this way and have working people, regular small businesses be the ones that are obligated to make those repayments. And just think about it, Jordan. I mean, we're talking about, like you said, Tom Brady, Khloe Kardashian, Kanye West. in your town or in your general area, and everybody watching, how many restaurants that used to be there are no longer there? How many small businesses that used to be there are no longer there? The big scam is that our representatives, our president and congressional leaders, hell, even possibly even your governor and your mayor, you think they represent your interests? Nope, they do not. They represent the interest of the business. And I'm so glad that you referenced COVID, because as we're getting ready to reopen schools, head back to schools, I'm very concerned for your children. I'm very, very concerned for your children, and even more concerned, equally concerned for teachers, which, by the way, we are seeing teachers not return to the classroom in tremendous numbers, in part because, number one, they are not paid, right? The PPP loans, where is the relief for the teachers who had to sacrifice so much of themselves personally and professionally in order to continue distance learning and in-person learning during an actual pandemic? I'm just tired of capitalism, Jordan. I am tired of it, okay? Like, it is a fucking scam. It is a scam on everybody who is not born wealthy. Even those who are able to accumulate wealth.
Enough is enough. Enough.
Yes. Well, it's enough. I'm over it. I'm over it. It's time to seize the means of production. It's time to redistribute the wealth. And the ways in which we do that are not supporting politicians that support these kinds of policies that are distributed and implemented in this way that always benefit the wealthy. Like, I wish there was more Bernies. But there's not. But there isn't. Everybody else is in the pocket of lobbyists, and they will agree and rubber stamp shit like this.
Or to condense what you just said,
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed.
It's horrible.
Audience, we paid a lot of money for this special feature that we could drop in sound bites, so I'm gonna fucking use them.
Oh, nice.
We're about to go to a guest, so hang on, Patricia. But I just want to say, I have had enough of Joe Biden. Yesterday it was Biden and Clyburn and Schumer, signing the Inflation Reduction Act, and you had Manchin there, the arsonist. Can you imagine giving the pen to sign the Inflation Reduction Act when the fucking arsonist there and giving him credit? And you have Schumer and these people with a straight face saying, we went against the special interest and every Republican voted against this shit bill. And yeah, there's some crumbs in it. Trust me, little tax incentives for electric vehicles is not going to prevent London from going on fire again, is not going to prevent California from going on fire. Kentucky is underwater, et cetera, et cetera. But you're going against special interests? Put aside the fact that in this bill, you're giving money to special interest, but going against special interest, you just gave Kanye West, and to be fair, this was Trump too in the PPP program. So Biden's administration, Trump's administration, they both oversee the PPP program. You gave Kanye millions of dollars. You gave Nancy Pelosi's husband millions of dollars. Reese Witherspoon, I like your movies, but you don't need any PPP money. Who else? Khloe Kardashian. I did a story, I think it was earlier this year. Kevin, the bald asshole from Shark Tank, Mr. Evil or whatever they call him, he's a millionaire. He's a billionaire. He got a PPP loan. He got several PPP loans, the guy from Shark Tank. So it's absolutely disgusting. And, of course, the Democrats now, they got a little bailout from the Supreme Court. So all of this is kind of disguised. They could run on Roe v. Wade, which is obviously a very important policy priority. I'm not saying don't run on that. They could run on Republican attacks on democracy and women and gay people. And basically, through their allies in the media, they get to pretend that they're actually, fighting for the little guy. Well, the little guy, I'm talking to you, little guy, if you're watching, you got screwed. You didn't get the money you should have got. Or like the guy I interviewed in Philly, you have to pay it back. You have to pay money back that was borrowed, loaned to you, not because you did anything wrong, not because you needed a little head start to start your business, but because there was a pandemic. And he's got to pay it back for 15 years, but Kanye gets free money forgiven, and Khloe gets free money forgiven, and Pelosi's husband gets free money. It's disgusting.
Well, Jordan, and I'm glad you bring up that point. First of all, let's reference the source in which the story came from, the Daily Mail. I have not seen this story in particular in mainstream outlets. Not to say, I mean, this was actually the first time I heard of it, but I don't know if it's going to get covered with the same amount of zeal, for example, as Lester Holt does on NBC Nightly News when talking about shoplifting rings and the amount of retail theft and how it's such a scourge on the economy and how stores and corporations can't, keep up with the amount of theft. Talk about this theft, Lester Holt. Talk about wage theft that Dollar General and Tesla and all these big companies are doing. It's just wild to me to continually see the mainstream media, not that I have any other expectation of them to do otherwise, but continually protect and defend the elites in the stories that they cover and the stories that they omit. This story about Kanye and Khloe and the rest of them getting millions, tens of millions of dollars in PPP loans that they do not have to pay back should be a much bigger deal. But of course, NBC News is too concerned about showing the store cam footage of the 12 or so people going into the Macy's in the Bay Area and taking all the clothes. Meanwhile, Macy's got insurance in place. They're not worried about that little shrinkage in reality. But the real deal is, again, the theft that is allowed to be perpetuated by the elites against the government, by extension against poor and working people who will not be receiving those same level of benefits, and to the small business folks who are expected to pay that money back when billionaires are not. No, that's not required of them.
Now, moving on, I'm excited about this story. You've been covering it on your show. There is an economic Hunger Games going on. So Biden, the Democrats, the media could throw out the job numbers. They could throw out GDP. They could say, hey, things are coming back. Yeah, maybe for them, not for workers and not for people who literally are facing homelessness because gentrification and housing is going up 20 to 30%. So there is a tenants' rights, tenant unions movement happening all over the country. I've covered it. You've covered it. And in Kansas City is really, really active. The Kansas City Tenants Union. We're going to bring on our guest in a minute, but I want to show you a clip. They're not fucking around. This is a clip of them disrupting. I think it was like a theater performance or something. Let's take a look at this. And I think it was a performance of a Sister Act, if I have that right. Joining me now, Patricia, from your car. I hope you're not driving. You are a member of the Kansas City Tenants Union, and I think as we speak, there's something going on locally with you guys fighting an ordinance that is supposedly supposed to help affordable housing, but is not. Tell us what you've been up against and what is the ordinance that just passed.
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. My name is Patricia. I'm a leader with KC Tenants. My voice is a little gone because of last night, and then I was just at City Hall right now, which is why I'm in my car. The Mayor Quentin Lucas, who ran on a platform where he spoke often about his experience being houseless growing up. He grew up in a co-op, pretends to know what social housing is, or he pretends to not know what it is. He just last week, he introduced 2 ordinances to city council. One of them essentially limiting how people are able to be involved in the process of incentives being given to developers building housing in the city, which is obviously a huge problem. It's undemocratic. It's an attack directly on organizers because we've shut developments down. So the city does not like it when we do that. So they're directly trying to attack our organizing, right? The other ordinance, which is the one that did get passed to full council tomorrow, just now about 30 minutes ago. Huge disappointment because we had 75 leaders show up in city council. Many of them gave testimony saying this will directly impact my ability to stay in my city because the city keeps saying they want to build affordable housing and give money to affordable projects. but they don't want to reckon with the fact that affordability in Kansas City right now is determined by homeowner and renter income from the 13 counties surrounding Kansas City, so the entire Kansas City metro area. And the average AMI that determines affordability right now, I think, is like $88,000 a year, whereas renters in Kansas City only make about $33,000 a year on average. So you can understand why affordability right now is not only unrealistic, but it's very unjust and not focused on the people who actually need it most.
And can you kind of talk about, because even before the pandemic, housing was going up all over the place. I mean, gentrification, I just call it economic terrorism because that's what it is. I mean, I went to Seattle a couple years ago, which is just homelessness is out of control. Rent had gone up 70% in 5 years. Thank you, Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Tell me about what has been going on in Kansas City before the pandemic and during the pandemic and now, as far as rent going up. Have they been trying to push people out of their units? Tell me about what's been going on there.
That's a great question. It's also hard. That's a big question too. It's hard to summarize it, but there's a lot of things in Kansas City that have been going on pre-pandemic and then during, and we are still in the pandemic, so I'll just leave it at during. But before the pandemic, you know, the Royals won the, I almost said the World Cup, but it's the World Series. We have the Chiefs here, like they won, oh my gosh, I need to stop pretending to know anything about sports. You know, we have popular sports teams. We have a pretty thriving like cultural community, which is built on the back of Black people. Like when people think of Kansas City, they think of barbecue, they think of jazz. A lot of like sports and stuff like that is definitely like co-opted Black culture that is then used to like build social capital for Kansas City to be cool and hip. We end up on lists that are like the top 10 like most affordable places to live because of course people living in New York, LA, Seattle, and Austin look at Kansas City prices and they're like, yeah, it absolutely is affordable. So when people move here with that expectation, it definitely lays the ground for people who have lived here and live here now to be pushed out and priced out by that type of culture around housing and people just like being willing to do anything to get a good deal, and developers being building a lot of buildings that are not catered to like poor and working class people. It's a huge problem. Kansas City just won the bid to host a couple of the World Cup games. There's like talk about, you know, like a women's soccer stadium being built in the riverfront area of the city. So it's all just based on the city trying to like push for its most like social developments that will make the city cool and trendy and keep growing without thinking about how it affects the people who have lived here for generations. We're really feeling it right now. I've lived here for 20 years, and out of those 10 years, I have lived on my own outside of my parents' house for 10 years, and I have never been able to stay in one single apartment for more than 1 year because of rising rent costs. And if that keeps going, I won't be able to live in the city I call home, which is really hard. So and a lot of my friends, you know, have been priced out. A lot of the people in my community have already gone through that. So it's not that it will happen. It is happening. It's just like, how close are you to the firing line, right?
You want to jump in? Kim?
Absolutely. Patricia, hello. My name is Kim. It's nice to see you. And I've been following the work of KC Tenants for some time. You guys are an active radical organization, and I appreciate the way that you all will show up at meetings and read these elected officials down. It is a wonderful sight to see. I had the opportunity, I actually used to live in Kansas City for a short amount of time, and I can totally empathize with what you're saying about the rents, because I didn't even qualify for an apartment despite having like a salaried position, and I actually had to stay for about 6 weeks. Are you familiar with Grandview, kind of on the south side of the city? there's a little like hotel there that is very sketchy, and I had to like I had to live there because because obviously the rents are so exorbitant. But I wasn't alone there, right? There's a lot of people who are finding themselves in perhaps extended stay hotels, or even worse, perhaps sleeping in their vehicles or couch surfing. And the amount of revitalization, I suppose, of the downtown area of Kansas City was something that I saw starting to happen about several years ago. But as you know, it's a very segregated area. I'm curious, for Black homeowners and for non-white homeowners, are they starting to see their neighborhoods be encroached upon with gentrification? Are people being forced, as you said, from their generational homes? And the tactics in which the city and county are using to get people out of their homes and their neighborhoods. In places I've seen it, like they have hiked up like the water bills to make them unsustainable. They've hiked up property taxes to force people out. Are we seeing those same tactics being deployed against longtime Kansas Cityans?
That's a great question. I'm actually, in terms of like utilities specifically, going up. I mean, they are going up. I don't have the like specific background in that realm of things to like say that it's been, I mean, it's never not strategic. But I don't know if I can speak to that specifically to like that contributing to like homeowners being pushed out. But we're talking about an ecosystem where it's like none of these things are they're all privatized. Like in the last couple of years, Evergy has taken over Kansas City and has done some really evil shit in our city in terms of providing energy and essentially people having to live at the whims of like what that company wants and what it needs. So it's like I may not know, you know, the more formal aspects of how that stuff moves, but I've felt it myself. I know people around me do as well. Homeowners, especially Black homeowners in the east side of the city, have definitely felt the you know, the repercussions of everything we're talking about, because as properties increase in value, property taxes do as well. People, you know, are either faced with the option of like, do they stay in a home that maybe is not as well maintained because of life in general, and somebody comes in with a sweet deal, you know, some house flipper comes in and offers you a lot of money up front and it seems desirable. Definitely don't want to blame the people who are faced with that type of decision because of you know, like I get it. It would be, I understand why people sell their homes when the opportunity comes and you're just kind of stuck between that and a house that you just can't maintain and pay for anymore. But it is a huge happening in Kansas City. Like east side of the city, all houses I feel like are becoming all neighborhoods are very slowly becoming very desirable as the spread grows. You know, reverse white flight is happening in Kansas City very rapidly, so people keep moving back into the city, and the people who have lived here in the inner city are being pushed out whether they're renters or not. Yeah.
And you know what I find interesting is most people focus on DC and Congress, which is very corrupt. But I have seen through reporting on the ground, most city councils and mayors are just as corrupt. You mentioned your mayor ran, you know, talking the talk on affordable housing and this and that, maybe had some progressive tones. But seems to me, whether it's Kansas City or other places, real estate developers are giving mayors and city councils a whole lot of money. And in exchange, it seems the mayor and the city councils are giving them the keys to the kingdom. Could you kind of talk about local politics there? Does it seem like the mayor and city council are genuine at all about, you know, avoiding some of the worst of this? Or are they just giving lip service to tenants unions and struggling people?
You know, there's definitely a spectrum. Like, I don't think that, you know, there's a spectrum of like how people move in city council and for what reasons. I don't think there's like one single person who I'm like, they're like the absolute best person and they always do the right thing. I think it's always like situation by situation, is usually how we assess like how people are moving. I'm definitely in my personal capacity. I'm a permanent resident, so I can't vote. So the way that I assess like elected officials, I think is really different than other people because I can only show up at City Hall in the chambers and testify in this way. I can't actually like vote people in and vote other people in when I want people out. But yeah, I mean, a lot of lip service, especially Mayor Quentin Lucas, like his platform, he committed to being like the housing mayor, and he loves to boast about all the units that have been built. Like on Twitter, just go to his Twitter and he's always like, these are the amount of units that are affordable that have been built under my watch. Like he loves to brag, but as soon as you confront him about the fact that like the affordable units you're mentioning, like who are they actually affordable to? Like what you're saying, Kim, is like a lot of people with full-time jobs. I had a full-time job at an arts college here, the college I graduated from. I had a full-time job with benefits, could not afford to live by myself. So it just isn't, I think politicians are so quick to say like, this is on paper affordable, like this is the way things have been, and they're just willing to run with that rather than literally 30 minutes ago in the council chambers, we had leaders testifying and saying like the definition of affordability in Kansas City needs to change because as it stands, it is not actually affordable. And we had Councilman Dan Fowler from the 2nd District in Kansas City. His response was, developers are supposed to make money. Like, are we supposed to stop people from making money? He literally said that out loud. He was like, would you show up and do your job if you weren't getting paid? And it's like, we shouldn't have to fucking handhold politicians and tell them making money and exploiting people's lives is not the same thing. So yeah, yeah.
But Tanisha, let me ask you a question really quickly because, you know, we all know that you can very easily tell a city, state, national government's priorities by what they spend their money on. So when it comes to the city of Kansas City, relative to other things, how much money, and when I say other things specifically, I do mean the police budget. When I'm talking about how much they spend on police, how much do they spend on affordable housing versus how much is spent on police and other things?
Absolutely. I am not going to quote numbers because I'm not good at remembering numbers if you haven't already noticed. But the mayor in 2020 with the civil uprisings, you know, like people were saying like we need to invest in our communities and not in policing them. I am personally an abolitionist. Like I believe that money and effort, like we can make our communities better if we're not investing money in police forces. So I like fully stand behind that. And in 2020, you know, the mayor and city council in general, you know, like it was pretty split in half because there are some pretty like pro-police people on council. But for the most part, the sentiment was like, you're right. Like the people are saying there needs to be a change in how we prioritize things because budgets are like, you know, they show the morals of the people building the budgets and like what they are willing to invest in financially. And you know, it seemed like things were kind of we were turning the tide with the people in charge. And this past year, the proposed budget gave an additional, I don't know how many millions of dollars to the police budget. And I mean, it's kind of a slap in the face, right? For people who
$269 million. $269 million they proposed.
Thank you. It is a ridiculous amount of money. And when you compare and I'm not saying like any amount of money going to police is right, but when you compare the Kansas City police budget to like New York's and compare the size of the city, just the actual like resources that are required, it is an outrageous amount of money. The amount of co-ops and social housing projects that could be built with that money we wouldn't even have to think about how are we paying for this if we literally spent percentage of what's going to police on housing. And I'm not talking about the mayor's definition of affordable housing. I'm talking about actual social housing.
Wow. Last question. Can you kind of talk about, because I think, I don't know if you're living online at all, but there's a lot of lefties who are losing hope these days. But I'm saying, hey, things are happening. You got the unions and people trying to unionize successfully, Starbucks, Amazon, Trader Joe's, etc. You got workers on strike, and you have tenants unions popping up. Can you kind of talk about your experience with the tenants union and also what have been some of the wins? Maybe they're not huge, but tenants unions are scoring some victories. And how could people get involved?
Totally. Yes, I am not unfamiliar with the feeling of, everything's going to shit, because I feel that all the time. The reason I find myself waking up every day ready to get shit done is because of the people I'm organizing with. KC Tenants is not only an incredible organization at building power, but our work is relational, and it is just like the most incredible group of people I have ever worked with. And our work is essential. It's vital for our work for us to like build strong relationships with each other. So it's not just like me coming and organizing with some like activist group. It's like, this is my family. These are the people who I want to live next to for the rest of my life. And I want to like ensure that they're able to. So I would say, if people are losing hope, I would first say, I hear you, and likely there's reason for it. Like, I really do feel that every day. The second thing I would say is organize. Like, if there isn't a tenant union in your city, in your neighborhood, start one. Like, hit up KC Tenants if you've got questions. Like, hit up other unions around. If it's not a tenant union and you want to start an artist union, if you want to start any sort of union, like, start gathering resources and talk to people and figure out what works for the people in your city and your neighborhoods. Because organizing, to me, is really, if I'm not doing it, I don't see much of a reason for me to wake up every morning. I really mean that.
Wow. Anything you want to add, Kim, before we let her go?
No, I'm just looking at the email because I'm on your mailing list, and I saw that the action that you had today was earlier at 12:30. So how did that go? And again, how can people get involved with what you're doing out in Kansas City?
Yeah, so if anybody out in Kansas City or beyond wants to get involved, just reach out to KC Tenants. The action today was pretty harsh. Like I said, it was the two ordinances that the mayor brought forth or introduced last week were being heard at the neighborhood planning and development committee meeting. And it was that same meeting where Dan Fowler, the council member, was saying that like developers should be making money. Like, why would they not be making money? So it got passed to full council. So tomorrow we're showing up in City Hall in Kansas City, I believe somewhere around noon or a bit later, to go to the full council meeting to shut that shit down, because it's not gonna fly. It's not affordable housing, and we can't keep saying that developers should be making money, because that's what they're in the business for. We should be saying we're not going to let them exploit us anymore.
That's right.
Amen. And I'm not religious. Thank you, Patricia. Everybody check it out, kctenants.org. And even if you don't live in Kansas City, you should go there anyway, just to kind of get some information, maybe some guidance on how you could start your own tenants union.
They have amazing social media, by the way. KC Tenants, you guys do an outstanding job on social media. Whoever does your social media, big up to them, because they do fantastic job, like editing and compiling your work and disseminating it. So shout out to KC Tenants, social media people.
It's a group effort.
Good.
It's a group effort. Everybody throws in on information, quotes. We have a whole design, like art and design team that works around the clock to get videos and posts put together. Yeah. It is a group effort for sure. And yeah, if anybody wants to reach out regarding our tenant union or questions about starting their own, let's make that shit happen.
Absolutely. Thanks, Patricia.
Thank you.
Patricia. See ya.
Wow. That's amazing. And, you know, I'll also say, listen to people. I could tell you from my experience covering Flint and other things, most of these politicians, they get away with screwing you because nobody shows up at city council meetings. Nobody shows up to actually challenge them. And they get very ruffled. Their feathers get ruffled when people disrupt, and tenants unions or whomever it is, you know, disrupt their meetings.
There was a very widely circulated viral clip, maybe about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, of, I believe, a woman from that organization, KC Tenants, who showed up. I'm not certain if it was a city council meeting or some sort of housing committee, but she read them for filth. I mean, read them for filth to the point that they complained to Twitter. They, the aggrieved elected officials, complained to Twitter and got the video removed. But whoever has a clip of that, please send that to me, because she was naming them, like name checking them, record checking them, and letting them know that, you know, their policies only work for a very small, privileged, moneyed group of people, and not for the residents of KCMO and KCK, Kansas City, Kansas as well. So yeah. Yes, wonderful. I love Patricia's work. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jordan.
Absolutely. And we do have, real quick, a little breaking news that might lead to...
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
So there's I don't know, at least 25 different investigations going on into President Trump. But there's been an investigation going on into his business dealings and his real estate empire. And his chief financial officer was charged a year ago. And up until now, he has not been willing to rat on Donald Trump. But with prison time coming up, apparently Alan Weisselberg, who is basically Donald Trump's accountant, has flipped and is now willing to testify against Trump's company. Former Trump Organization chief financial officer Alan Weisselberg has withdrawn a not guilty plea in his tax fraud case in New York and is willing to testify against the company in court. The New York Daily News reported Weisselberg informed the court Wednesday he's willing to implicate his former employer. The former CFO from the Trump Organization and the Trump Payroll Corporation was being tried for tax fraud. This is from the Daily News. As part of Weisselberg's plea deal, for which he's expected to serve 5 months on Rikers Island, 5 months, Weisselberg will agree to testify against the companies when they go to trial in October, if he is called as a witness, according to a source who spoke on the condition of anonymity. Former President Trump has not been named as a defendant in the Manhattan District Attorney's case, which stems from a broader probe into his business practices. And Weisselberg's plea agreement contains no provision relating to cooperating against Trump. So doesn't seem like yet there's a direct line to Trump, but it is Trump's business. So if this guy testifies that the Donald knew that they were fudging the numbers, inflating property numbers, et cetera, I'm not one who says the walls are closing in, but I don't know if we have a legal system that holds wealthy white people accountable.
No, we don't. We do not.
But
we do not. Jordan, come on.
Technically, it would not be good for Trump. But what are your thoughts?
So, I mean, I don't know where you're from, but aren't you in a region in which Donald Trump had a tremendous footprint in South New Jersey, in Atlantic City, and was playing fast and loose with a lot of things, numbers, property values, et cetera, and all of Donald Trump's Atlantic City shit had to, what was it, Chapter 11, whatever, Chapter 7, Chapter 77, I don't know what the bankruptcy shit is. But my point is this: Donald Trump has been playing fast and loose with his financial statements pertaining to his business for decades, for literal decades. He is a scammer. He is a shyster. He will try to get over on his own investors. He will try to get over on local and state governments and the federal government as well. Show me where Trump has been held accountable beyond having to pay a fine or being on the losing end of some sort of civil lawsuit or civil settlement. Like, people want to see Trump in jail, and I get that. I get that very much, but I don't think that that is going to come to fruition because people like him don't go to jail. You know what I'm saying? People around him might go to jail. Like there might be some others that might go to jail. I mean, but don't expect to see Donald, Jared, Ivanka. None of them is going down, y'all. They are not going down. Not in the way that I think liberals particularly envision him going down, like him in handcuffs in some sort of perp walk, being escorted into Manhattan, 24th NYPD precinct. Like that's not happening. That is not happening. I think Trump may have to pay out some money, and that's it. You can't disgrace someone who has no shame. Trump is very unabashedly a heel and he loves being a heel. And on top of that, I don't even think this news would obviously affect or diminish him in the eyes of his supporters at all. I don't know, Jordan, like all of this shit, like it's like this tiptoeing around, like we are continually being fed these breadcrumbs, these tidbits. Oh, it might be the time. Like I feel like we are Sanford and Son watching Fred talk about, is this the big one? You know what I'm saying? This might be the big one. I don't know, but yeah, I don't see it happening.
Here's my thoughts, and I full disclaimer. I'm a white dude, so obviously with that comes a certain baked-in white privilege. But I would say. I think it also depends on the politics, because a lot of times wealthy white men and wealthy white women get off because politically speaking, it wouldn't be beneficial for those states' attorney generals or those administrations to go after them. For example, I grew up in New York. It was a known secret that Trump was involved with the mafia. New York real estate was linked to the mafia. It was a known secret that Trump was a tax dodger and committing tax fraud. However, Donald Trump was good for the New York's economy. A lot of wealthy folks that lived in his properties. Donald Trump brought business to New York. So they kind of looked the other way, even though he was committing crimes. So politically speaking, when Donald Trump was just a tabloid whore, whatever, he's committing crimes, but we're not going to go after him. I think that there's a chance, probably not on this one, that he might there might at least be an attempted prosecution. I'm not going to say conviction, because obviously the politics has changed. He was president. Obviously, you have a lot of wealthy people in this country who are no longer pleased by him. And when the wealthy are pissed off, that's when you might see prosecutions against wealthy people. I think in particular, and again, I'm not saying he's definitely going down. I think in particular, number one, we don't know what those documents were like under the kitchen at Mar-a-Lago. So I have no idea. I don't know if they're going to go, if he had like the nuclear codes or nuclear stuff there, and they have proof that he was doing some nefarious shit with it, I think even he would go down. But I actually think the thing in Georgia, where they have him on tape, get me 11,000 more votes, I think that could possibly be his downfall, because he's on tape. There's laws against what he's doing. There's the Election Records Act, all this stuff. It could somewhat connect to January 6th. So listen, I'm not going to say Donald Trump's going down, but at some point it's like whack-a-mole. If you got 6 or 7 different investigations, at least one thing might yield at least a prosecution. But you might be right, because again, this is the United Corporations of America, and wealthy white folks generally get off, or they see, 4 months in a bed and breakfast prison.
So I'm glad you brought up the politics and the temperature of the country right now, because you see the way the Trump supporters reacted when the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, showing up outside of the Phoenix FBI office with AR-15s. Try charging Trump criminally. See what happens. See what happens. Watch his supporters freak all the way the fuck out. That would be the excuse that they need to kick off some sort of, Civil War 2.0. This is what they've been waiting for. And I was watching some of the, the man on the street interviews of the people. It wasn't just Phoenix, the Phoenix FBI offices that people showed up. They showed up outside of St. Louis. They showed up outside of Palm Springs, FBI field offices. And some of the comments they were saying was that, they were calling the FBI the Gestapo. I'm sorry, I find hilarious. And then, obviously defund the FBI, destroy the FBI.
It wasn't just showing up. Remember, somebody, a deranged Trump guy, attacked an office in Cincinnati, and there was gunfire, and he got killed.
That's right. So actually charge Trump with something and see what happens. Charge him with something criminal and see what happens. And I think that Merrick Garland, the Department of Justice, hell, Christopher Wray at the FBI, I mean, these people aren't stupid. They understand exactly who they're dealing with, even though previous iterations of leadership of the FBI will tell you that Black identity extremists are the country's biggest threat. I think we know that's false now. I think that was false when it was said by James Comey, and it remains false. But anyway, they understand exactly who they're dealing with. They're dealing with a highly organized, armed, militia trained sort of population that makes up Donald Trump's base. And they know that these people are willing to engage in acts of overt violence. As you said, showing up to the Cincinnati FBI office with a nail gun, body armor, and AR-15 and exchanging gunfire with cops. But again, the deference that the police showed to that person in that situation, obviously very telling as well. Negotiating with him for several hours before finally killing him after he done shot at them, but that's a whole nother story. But I don't think these people are stupid. And I think that everyone who is anticipating that Trump is going to be charged criminally is not paying attention to the fervor and the vitriol coming from his base. These people are violent. These people have already plotted to kidnap and murder other elected officials. I'm thinking of Gretchen Whitmer. And I think that case actually fell apart in Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, in some way, shape, or form. But regardless, I think that the law enforcement powers in this country are afraid of Trump's base, and they should be. They should absolutely be afraid of that of them. And I think that is really dictating a lot in terms of what steps that they take going forward when it comes to thinking about prosecuting Donald Trump.
You may be right. You may be right. To me, I think the Civil War is coming with or without charging Trump. I mean, I don't like using that term loosely, but having covered as many things as I cover and a whole lot of Trump rallies, the country's a powder keg. Trump has definitely made that worse. All the right-wing media. I mean, it's not just Fox News anymore. You got all these charlatans on YouTube and, Steve Bannon in his war room and all that. I mean, I think, definitely charging Trump would bring us closer to it. But I think there's a powder keg. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean I'm okay with Hillary getting off and the bankers getting off and Big Pharma getting off, but I don't think you could not go after Trump because of fear of, well, what would it mean for his supporters? Because then, all right, are we going to let every fucking lunatic like Trump do whatever they want for fear of their supporters? I mean, something's got to give. But you may be right. I mean, you may be right that nothing's going to happen. I just think at the end of the day, it's only Donald Trump, I don't really think they're doing it so he doesn't run again, because actually I think the Democrats want him to run again. Donald Trump is probably the only person at this point that, a half alive Joe Biden could beat. I think at the end of the day, if you have overwhelming evidence that he's committed crimes, I genuinely think that, particularly in Georgia and these other places, they're going to want to set an example to Trump's base, to a lot of these right wingers, that no. But this new QAnon meets Marjorie Taylor Greene's Christian nationalist meets the Proud Boys meets the Oath Keepers. There's actually going to be serious consequences for you people, because we've seen with January 6ers who were storming the gates, once they faced jail time, suddenly a lot of them started backing off. Oh, we've learned our lesson, this and that. I could be completely wrong, but at the end of the day, we'll see. All I know is at a certain point, somebody with 9 lives, your luck runs out.
I don't know. Get Jenny Thomas while you're at it. These people don't go down, Jordan. They do not go down. If George W. Bush,
if they kill themselves in their prison cells.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. But I don't know. Former presidents, I need precedent.
Susan says I'm very naive. You might be right. We'll have to play the tape if he's convicted or if he's even prosecuted.
If he's even charged. Is he even charged with anything?
Well, there is precedent, but it was in a long galaxy far away. His name was Richard Nixon. When money did not buy politicians, when there wasn't a Fox News, and when there wasn't in the 70s, money wasn't buying off politicians like it is now. They were corrupt, but not to this degree. But You may be right, because at the end of the day, I think Trump, anybody else, just on the tax fraud, would be in prison. But they might not want to open that Pandora's box like you're talking about, because but I'm
glad that you mentioned Trump's history in the New York and New Jersey area, because like you said, the officials, government officials, whatever, law enforcement look the other way, right? This is how Donald Trump has come to expect to be treated. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the treatment that he's received. Like, he gets to do what he wants to do, and he just gets to have friends in high places that don't necessarily pursue things. Now, he may not have those same sort of circle of friends in those positions of power, but should Joe Biden be defeated in 2024 and a Republican be elected, and Trump we're all hypothesizing here, is facing some sort of criminal charges or even gets convicted of something, I see a pardon in his future. You know what I mean? Like, they just, the upper crust of the upper crust doesn't let each other go down. You know what I mean? They just don't allow it to happen. So I implore people, like, pray for better things, wish for better things, wish for housing equality, wish for, equal voting rights. Don't wish for Donald Trump to go to jail, because you're going to be sad. You're going to be sad at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Let's read some super chats before the grand finale. Mike, $10. Did you see Kaiser workers are on strike in Northern California? I'd look into it. Very important story for mental health care workers and their patients. They aren't getting much coverage. I did see that. Thanks for reminding us. We'll definitely cover that.
Oh, you saw it on my show, because I covered this yesterday on Burn It Down with Kim Brown. You should go check it out, Mike. I'm all over it.
Which, by the way, there's no excuse. 250 people watching right after this. You can do it right now. Subscribe to Kim's channel. It's in the description. Burn It Down with Kim Brown, so you can get her solo without my annoying ass. Mike, $2. The union is National Union of Healthcare Workers. Thank you. Double K, $19.99. I appreciate it. Thanks, Double K. Humorous, $2. Good show, Status Coup. I like the new host. She's the bomb. Why, thank you.
Thank you.
Double K, $19.99. Thank you again, Double K. Hello, Kintu, $5. I work in KCMO, Paseo and True
Paseo. Paseo,
thank you for the pronunciation.
That's okay.
Sound like a dumbass. Paseo and True Stare slowly being encroached on, but for the most part, they're just low-income housing areas, not too many businesses. Interesting. Yeah. Humorous, $20. Very informative. Thank you, Jordan. I'm glad someone out there actually reports what's going on in this country. We appreciate what you do, bro. Keep up the good work. Cheers to this woman. Her name's Kim Brown. Yes, cheers indeed. Morris Brown, $3. Thank you, Morris. Befer Luger, $9.99. If he's the only one like him to go to jail, that's not much of a win, is it? Especially if it's in retaliation for his threatening deep state as incompetently as it may have been and radicalizes the right. Thanks for the super chat. I don't really buy that argument. I hear a lot of people saying, like, well, no, not unless Hillary's indicted, not unless this person, not unless we get all these things should he be. It's like, listen, two things could be true at once. I think Hillary should be indicted. I think Hunter Biden should be indicted. I think we should retroactively put Jamie Dimon and the rest of these Wall Street fucking criminals in prison. But that, we could wish all we want. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to say let Donald Trump off because A, B, C, D, E, F has never been brought to justice. It's a start. It's a start if Donald Trump is prosecuted for anything. And by the way, let's also not forget Nancy Pelosi and her husband are just out in the open committing insider trading. I mean, it's just blatant. He just sold whatever stock he had in these chip companies before the CHIPS bill went out. I'm not going to pretend I know anything about the CHIPS bill, but I know he sold his stock, and I know he's been buying and selling stock very, very close to when bills are passed. I mean, normal people go to jail for that. Working people certainly go to jail for that. So let's not let Pelosi off the hook either. Humorous, $5. The needs of the many must always outweigh the needs of the few or the one. Agreed. Kim, thank you for joining. Everybody, subscribe to Burn It Down with Kim Brown. Also, put it in your calendar. Next Wednesday and Wednesdays going forward, Kim will be hosting on Status Coup solo. And she has great guests, obviously great takes. She's got her own broadcasting experience back in the day, too. So she's no Cub Scout. And I really, really enjoy your show, which I watched some of yesterday. And I'm looking forward to you hosting, too. So Give when it's not me, don't click off, click on. It'll be even better with Kim hosting. Kim, anything I forgot where people can find you?
Hey, I also host the Remix Morning Show on Black Power Media that is on YouTube. We do that Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern, along with some of my colleagues, Jacqueline Lukman from Sputnik Radio, Dr. Jared Ball, I Mix What I Like, Kalanji Changa, FTP Movement, Kamal Franklin of the Community Movement Builders. If you're interested in getting a lens of Black liberation politics and what Black left radical politics look like, come on over to Black Power Media. Check us out, the Remix Morning Show. I'll be on there tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me. And I look forward to saving the tape when you prove me wrong. And that Donald Trump is not going to be prosecuted. We'll keep this. But if I'm right, I'm going to do a victory lap too. Thank you. And we'll see you guys tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern. Thanks, Kim.
See ya. Thank you, Jordan.